So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fifth webinar of the series RMAI Compass 2.0, and thank you for joining in. And apologies for delay in advance. Today's topic, which is what can make us win, either digital or phygital. And for the session, to moderate the session, we have Mr. Puneet Vidyarthi. He is currently working as India brand leader, construction equipment for construction equipment business for Case New Holland India, a part of $30 billion Fortune 500 company. And before joining Case, Mr. Vidyarthi was heading JCB India Limited as Associate Vice President and Head of Marketing and Digital Innovations, headquartered in Ballabgarh, Haryana. And he joined JCB in 2001 as a manager at Ballabgarh branch. So Puneet sir, I'll welcome you, and over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Adhar, and thanks for introduction. And just a slight correction, modification. So the current role is as head of product marketing for construction equipment business for India region. First of all, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us. In the next an hour or so, we will try to discuss and delve upon a very, very interesting, very contemporary and relevant topic of digital or phygital. We have tried to package this session, as much informative as possible, with some, insights coming from the various sectors, as well as some of the hands-on work done by some of our eminent speakers. Just to give you a background about RMAI, most of you are aware it's a not-for-profit organization. It's an industry body devoted purely furthering the cause of rural marketing in Asia. And since the inception of RMAI, we have been helping marketeers to learn and unlearn best practices of rural markets. We have got a very healthy, membership base, which includes people from industry, media, IT, academia, activists, government officials. I think the entire gamut of personalities and skills. This particular initiative, what we are actually going through, the Compass, it's a series of webinars which RMAI has initiated in May 2020 last year, when the COVID anxieties and COVID uncertainties were there at peak. This current series is the second edition of the same Compass 2.0, which started last month. We had very interesting sessions earlier this month, basically disseminating the knowledge on the existing and interested players. The sessions what we had already in this series, are some of them are like how to prioritize the rural landscape. What are the real rural growth story? What are the 3 V's of communication? Increasing the role of technology in the last mile reach, and now today's session on digital and phygital. Some of the questions which we got while the audience has registered are around also understanding more into detail about the rural and the practices. So I would urge these webinars are also available on RMAI channels. You can go through these webinars which were published, and you can probably also get some insights about the rural markets over here. Today, I have a very, very eminent speaker panel with me. So let me introduce my colleagues here today. Starting from Sandip. Mr. Sandip Bansal is a veteran in rural marketing with experience of more than 30 years in the industry. He currently leads the rural practice of GroupM Dialogue Factory. Before joining Dialogue Factory, he founded Expanse Asia, the rural practice of Starcom Media West Group, and led it as country head. He was also the founding member of Ogilvy Outreach, the rural, which too he led as country head. So he has got extremely rich experience of both planning, strategy, and execution. He was also the regional director of Spur Visual Merchandising and general manager of Video on Wheels. Video on Wheels probably was the India's first organized professional rural agency in this space. I also have Mr. Venkatram Vasantvada. Venkat is an MD and CEO of SeedWorks International. He's a senior agribusiness professional with over 20 years of leadership experience in seed, crop protection and crop nutrition industry in India, Asia Pacific and Africa region with leading MNCs. So Venkat has worked with companies, brands like Monsanto, DuPont Pioneer, Advanta UPL, and Deepak Fertilizers and Petrochemical Corporations. Venkat has worked extensively across Asia and Africa in markets served by small and marginal farmers. And some of the very, very interesting case studies which he is going to share with us today will explain and actually open our eyes at what can be done even at that level of engagement. He had worked for these small marginal farmers in building strategic alliances and collaborative relationships with many forums in developing model for improving farm productivity and farm incomes. And I'm pleased to also introduce my my third colleague, Vatsal. Vatsal is, though not well, but Vatsal, I really admire and appreciate your commitment toward the cause. We will try and keep you as less engaged as possible because I know you're, but really thank you very much, Vatsal, and you are just in time. I was just about to introduce you. Vatsal, Ashar, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Vatsal is a founder and CEO of DMA Asia. He is recognized in the industry as a customer experience expert, having over 2 decades of experience from customer strategy to business execution using creative and practical marketing solutions. He has been instrumental in strengthening the association of data-driven marketing and advertising, known as DMAI also. Its presence globally over the last 10 years. DMAI is today the largest melting point of blue chip CMOs in the marketing ecosystem. So we have got extremely learned and extremely honorable speaker panel today with us. Without much ado, we have got together we have tried to package this 1 hour or so. Very try to make it as informative, as engaging as possible. So without wasting much time, I'll quickly set up the context and then hand over to our eminent speakers to carry forward. And as a moderator, I'll try and speak as less as possible and let our speakers speak. But just to set the context, I was just going through some of the studies which have recently got published, and in a recently digitally evolved market, the study got published that 72% of the internet users they shop online. 52% of these actually buy both online and offline, and it is predicted that by this year end, this 52% will go up to 78%. Further, when they diced, we found that only 13% buy only brick and mortar, and 9% buy only online. So there is a large chunk of consumer which is actually operating both online and offline, before taking a purchasing decision. Now, this brings us a very interesting insight to the whole game, which is like bringing online and physical sales together. What we have also seen as a consumer during the COVID period, that even during the COVID periods when the movements were restricted and we didn't have liberty to go out and do the things what we wanted, still we saw that the interaction with the sales associate and the personalized service that never went out of the game. Even during the peak COVID days, we all stood in front of Kirana shops. We all did that, or the medicine shops, and brought home the things which we needed, despite of the fact that some of these were also available online. So somewhere that interpersonal relationship remains the highly valued element for the customer while the purchasing decision is happening even during the COVID times. That's what we have also seen. That makes the point that physical and emotional component of making purchases will remain in the picture always. We have also seen another example of online classes, something which is very considered to be very physical in nature, but because of that video element coming in, that boundaries, that those limitations were also got eroded. During the initial days of COVID, we all actually used the initial euphoria of Zoom and connected with all our college alumni and families and friends, across the world. So we all did that. So somewhere that that crossing the bridge during the COVID days had helped and actually opened up a lot of opportunities for all of us. Now, in the face of this duality, the term which has now come into the existence and relevance is Phygital. Phygital is nothing but marrying both online and offline environments, taking the best practices of both the sides of the life. To complete, now this is important, to marry the best of the both worlds to complete and satisfying customer experience. And that is what probably Phygital would mean. Now, how Phygital is different from other phenomena, it's because of its very nature of focus on multi-channels rather than only digital or only Phygital. And that is what we are going to discuss today. Now, as they say, nobody in management or B schools takes you seriously unless you have a model for it. So there is a model for Phygital as well, which is model of 3 I's, which is immediacy, immersion, and interaction. And you can find it across the internet and everywhere. Just very quick recap. So immediacy is it's things to happen at that moment when they are needed. Immersion is obviously part of the user experience, and interaction is the communication needed between the physical environment and the digital environment, a seamless communication which is needed. So what we are going to do, we are putting a hypothesis, on the table, and next, 45 or 50 minutes, we will debate around this hypothesis and see towards the end, and where do we stand. And the hypothesis is that using Phygital to connect the online and offline worlds will allow a brand to create closer, more efficient, and human customer experience. Now, human customer experience is very important. This is what we will also dwell upon during this talk. So straight away from here, Vatsal, I come to you with my first question. You had been, working across the brands, especially in the retail channel, and more evolved into the digital space. And we also have seen that pandemic has been a new leveler. Now, in your opinion, Vatsal, what do you think? Which are those levers of brands, especially in urban consumer space, are having to maintain the continuity of business?
Thanks, Puneet, for this opportunity once again. And what I'm going to share today is my personal experiences speaking to business leaders across many blue chip organizations. To your question of levers, as I was going through and doing some more research to make the context primarily given that this audience would be people who are interested in marketing to a non-urban audience, rural marketing thing. I just thought of adding some more pointers to it. Pandemic has been a great leveler, and we all say there is a new normal. But the truth is there is no new normal. We're still wearing masks. There is nothing new about. There is nothing new about this. There is nothing normal about this new. And in terms of levers, what is important? It's not that you switch to something, but if I have to use the words of Lloyd Matthias when he shared, he said, when it's stormy at sea, you keep working on your nets. And through the pandemic, there have been brands who have been able to survive or succeed because business is not usual. Brands that have been resilient and agile. That's an important thing to keep moving forward. Second, those who have been having a continued dialogue with their stakeholders and customers. That's been there. And marketers always will need to be the voice of the customer in the boardroom. That becomes important. The other point I'd like to make is that and these are some of the fundamental things that need to be done on an ongoing basis, not because we're out of a pandemic. And very beautifully said by Vichy of Max New York Life, the 2 mantras that they thrive on, which helped Max New York Life in a lockdown situation to be able to get their 15,000 employees, about 50,000 variable pay agents, and about 60,000 bank assurance people. Everything into this digital physical world, getting phygital truly in about 4 weeks' time from the first lockdown. So how did they do it? If there is something that we need to learn from that, they did 2 things. The first thing, what they have at the core of their business is, they said, we'll find purpose. Be purposeful to your customer. What do you stand for? Because you are there in the organization today, you will go away tomorrow, nobody is going to remember you. And they derived that purpose for themselves, that we'll increase the value of people's lives. It was their purpose. That purpose superseded everything. And the second thing, what Vishy said, I personally like it. It was something new to listen to a non-marketer in the marketing forum that we had, was that be paranoid. And interestingly, if you recognize, if you Google, is Google paranoid about their monopoly, you will get dreams and dreams of articles. Google is extremely paranoid about their monopoly. That what if everything changes tomorrow? And they keep preparing for the worst. So the point that Vishy was making is that if you are prepared for, if you act and behave that you are in difficult times, in the good times also, then you will never have to face difficult times. Most of the times we say sab theek chal raha hai, so how does it matter? So that's truly been there. I think these are the fundamental tenets that are there to make marketing tick at all times, fundamentally, because I didn't want to go away with that. The really, if I have to go tactically, if I have to talk very, very tactically of what are the new things that are there, then we should all recognize that between a fad and between learned behavior is what we have during the last 1 year. Consumer behaviors have changed because there are new learned methodologies. So what happened last year was people invoked passion points. That was like spreading awareness. That is one. And this is from Saurabh Bajaj of Britannia. So there's a lot of depth to the pointers that he had found. The second thing that was there is things to do at home. So like the surf ads said, daag ab ghar pe bhi ghar pe hai, stuff like that. Celebrating home time, about cooking and things like that. The appreciation and gratitude, I think Amazon took the cake with it on that for its employees. Support and solidarity. You could do small things, but yet get a lot of brand mention and salience, like the Parle-G biscuit program. And important is free riding on the topicality that is there. So in between, we had this vocal for local. So a lot of brands capitalize on that vocal for local. So I think essentially the fundamentals and the tactics need to come together to be able to take us from where we are to where we want to get to.
Great. Thanks, Vatsal. I think thanks for setting up the context pretty beautifully. And I think there is a lot of learnings which across industry people can take from there. And you talked about purpose, and purpose is actually probably the backbone of everything. On that point, Sandip, I come to you, and taking a leaf from what Vatsal has shared, the views from the industry leaders across sectors, and let's move to into the rural space, and let's see how do you see the shift in traditional pre-COVID strategy versus post-COVID era strategies to reach to the rural consumer. I mean, what I mean is basically short-term, long-term sustainable approach, and I think it's a direct linkage with the purpose which you just talked about. Sandip, over.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think Vatsal is absolutely right that pandemic has been a big leveler, right? So if we look at traditionally, if you look at it, urban has been always an approach to urban has been more structured and strategic for 3 reasons primarily. One is that big data has been available, so which could help me sharpen my target, which could help me define the role of each media and its strategic deployment. 2, there were more sustainable media options available, and therefore what it led to was that measured communication and marketing objectives what I could deliver. But rural per se, traditionally has been that's where it's been dependent on restricted by two things. One is that lack of scalable options available. That's one of the big challenge. And second thing is its measurement. That had been the bigger challenge for a traditionally approach to rural has been more about congregation approach led, where either we will participate in an existing congregation or create platforms to kind of aggregate people. One, because that we needed to, the IPC or the reach out physical was expensive, and we needed to kind of aggregate people and really enrich that through technology, through various gimmickries within that to increase that memorability. But what pandemic has done is that it has changed the way we look at rural. There were challenges and restrictions, the way you could use traditional approaches to rural earlier. But now one could look at newer ways of reaching out. There were challenges of the physical reach out, so we could not do that bit. And to me, unless and until we have an approach which kind of appeals to both CMO and CFO, no rural or no initiative can really actually deliver. One would do experiments. They would lead to some feel good kind of a experiments, and that's why you see many frequent experiments like that. But you really never saw, or very rarely did we see, a sustained initiative. What pandemic did is that it pushed a marketeer to think through again his approaches, with congregations not being available, with more one-on-one, very restricted way of you could communicate, which were expensive to an extent that you are reaching out to much lesser number of people at a time. So you really need to innovate within that. So whether it was physical, which is more one-on-one, or no-touch models, which is digital. So a blend of that, what it was able to do was design strategies which are sustainable. Rural has always been about one exposure or two exposure at the best, but not really a sustained initiative the way we look at an urban audience. But now, pandemic kind of forced a marketeer to look at their approach altogether and say that how do I remain in touch with my consumer? And it's not about reaching out to those innovators or early adapters, but it is also, the rural is about the mass. Unless and until we are able to convert mass, it really does not deliver. That's what pandemic was able to deliver, and that's where a lot of experiments were done of physical and digital together, which is Phygital, and that is what is kind of going to be yielding into results. And I believe that next 2-3 years we'll see the kind of investment into rural that we have perhaps not seen in last 2 or 3 decades. That's how I kind of look at pandemic's contribution to rural markets and how do we take it forward.
I think perfect. That's very interesting. So, and as we all know, that pandemic has changed a lot of things, including our thought processes and the traditional way of taking and viewing things in very conventional form. And you raised a very interesting point of balance between CMO and a CFO, and that's where one of the questions was also asked during the registration by someone, how to do justice with the ROIs of Phygital, and we'll talk about it towards the end. But that brings me, Venkat, that brings me to you with a very interesting point. So Sandip talked about long-term and short-term strategies, and you had been working, your experiences, had been into the hardcore execution, and you had actually led from the front. And if I may say so, you had actually ahead of time, you've done a crystal ball gaze and already done some, path-breaking work in recent times of digitization of one of the very basic ingredients in a very engaging, typically, agriculture as a very engaging sector. And that ingredient of the whole sales process is demonstration. Venkat will be interested. It will be very interesting for us to understand and hear from you the story behind it and how did you do it and what had been the learnings from there.
Thank you, Puneet. Thank you and good evening to fellow panelists and good evening to all the participants. Well, the fact that we are doing this Compass 2.0 on a digital means we are also experiencing the physical plus digital mode. So all of us, we are doing so. So the agri input industry was no different from it, though of course, most of our work used to happen in the heartland there. So one of the things, what pandemic did was pandemic only accelerated some of those initiatives which we were taking, and probably some of the naysayers and fence sitters started at least believing in these, initiatives. Yes, earlier when we started, these initiatives were looking like fads and, some of those experiments which people want to do and whether there is a practicality to it. So the practical experiences, and I would refer to the category of seed among the 4 critical agri inputs. As all of us know, or if you don't know, one needs to know that this is a very high involvement purchase, and the farmer basically looks at the crop and looks at the demonstration before actually he makes a commitment to buy, which means roughly around D-2 years is the overall planning process. So what typically used to happen is that we used to bring the farmers to the field from the nearby villages, and there was a demonstration which was being done. Now, while that was all happening, there were also challenges in reaching out to the number of farmers, bringing in cost efficiencies, bringing in speed, and also, given the kind of a social structure which exists in villages, not all the farmers would want to be seen together and stuff like that. Of course, this was happening at the back end. So what happened is, while we were trying to problem solve those issues in terms of developing some products and all, the pandemic actually accelerated the overall process. So what we did was, we have some products which we have developed, which we have labeled it as an e-sampark is what we call. So if there is a harvest day which is there, that link goes to all the fellow farmers or the farmers whom we want to invite. And those farmers sitting from the comfort of their, village or probably from their own house, they can actually see the live demonstration of the product which they want to buy, sitting from their own home. So what did it serve? It served the purpose of targeting the right farmers to whom you want to show the product. Also bringing in an element of a knowledge. When the frontline guy demonstrates a product, obviously there are much more technicalities to it, and it would not have been possible today because of this product. What we have some of the senior members, senior agronomists who can sit in the same format and then also answer those questions. So it brought in speed, it brought in efficiencies. More importantly, it also kind of brought in the right kind of customers whom we wanted to expose the products. And lastly, it also solved this issue of, congregations were not allowed. You can't bring so many farmers and multiple other things. Similar, there was one more product which we used as virtual reality. Currently, that experiment is going on in the northern markets, where we actually did the shoot and we gave it to those large farmers of Punjab and Haryana and all, where they can see it through the VR medium and they can see the live, demonstration. So VR, AR, as well as this, all these 3 digital mediums were explored. I'm still saying that this is basically evolving. And we have seen from the first year to the second year, when the pandemic really accelerated the process, there was a much more buying in the way things were getting accepted in the field. And farmers also responded. See, more often than not, we dismiss the farmer saying that, no, he's not tech savvy, he can't use it. But when, things came to such a kind of a situation, obviously he also started embracing the technology and started experiencing it. I would say we have a long way to travel, but I think these are initial experiments, and probably I think, we are seeing success in it.
That's very interesting, Venkat. And you had actually brought in the AR and VR, and Vatsal and I were talking on the offline mode 2-3 days back, and we were actually talking about the technologies coming into the whole play, the VRs and ARs, and the data analytics and things like that. Vatsal, that's a very interesting case study where in the most engaging scenario of a business which is highly regulated in terms of rules and laws of the land, still Venkat and his team had been able to crack that, or break the glass ceiling and get into the newer paradigm. Vatsal, what other, and you had published a work, I've read one of your work recently. You had talked about regulatory landmines, and that's a new term I actually learned from that. So if you can expand on that and also enlighten us on how will it change the balance between the digital and phygital with respect to these regulatory landmine thought which you had propagated. You're on mute, Vatsal, you're on mute.
Sorry. So when we talk about regulatory landmines, we should remember this. So like we say for corona se dadna nahi hai, ladna hai, right? So this regulatory landmines might look very scary, but if there is a intent to be able to be of meaning and service to customers, one should be able to look at it. Instead of trying to speak some legal mumbo jumbo, let me try and dissect it in some layman's words, if it's going to be of relevance to the audience. There are 5 key changes that are coming to regulation. Marketers were not so much as a regulated profession, or advertising was not a regulated profession. It was only the pharma companies or the insurance companies or telecom companies who had to follow a lot of regulatory stuff around communication and advertising. But the 5 changes that are coming is, first is the right to privacy, the privacy bill that is there in India. The bill covers a lot and yet leaves out a lot to interpretation. But fundamentally, it means that every time you are going to communicate to a customer, you would need to get consent and be able to tell the customer why you are collecting data, how you will store data, how you will use data, and that the customer has got the right to be forgotten. So broadly speaking, if you're not going to abuse customers' privacy, if you're not going to bombard the customer with SMS or unsolicited messages, you should be good. In context, if you are advertising even unknowingly to somebody who's below 18, there are strict laws that are coming around it. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening under privacy. One just needs to be careful that you are doing stuff the right way. The second thing that is there on a regulatory standpoint is the CCPA. Now, the new CCPA, it's creating challenges amongst many other things. It's designed to protect consumers at different level, largely a B2C customer. But fundamentally, the big issue that marketers are facing is authenticity claims. A detergent brand could get away for many years saying that brand A washes whiter, your teeth whitest. Stuff like that, the superlative claims that are there. And then there are funny things that happen, like there's a brand ambassador sort of for oil brand, and you suddenly unfortunately get a heart attack. And you try and promote your product saying that this is going to protect you from COVID, and suddenly Akshay Kumar's getting COVID, stuff like that. So the authenticity claim. Today, consumers want to be guaranteed that whatever you are saying is something that they could rely upon and trust upon. So that's the second thing that brands are trying to manage. The third thing that is there are this new guidelines around social media, digital, and OTT. And how do you ensure that your communication is within that framework? What are the right things that you need to do? So you are on the right side of the law and you are able to effectively talk to your consumers as well. The fourth thing that is there is around the new guidelines that ASCII has rolled out in terms of influencer marketing. Till recently, we had celebrity influencers and celebrity endorsers who may be using a product, may not be using the product. So there is a big debate that's going on that, they say that the celebrity, whoever is endorsing the product, must also be using the product. But just imagine the case of now influencer post the pandemic has moved from celebrity endorsers to micro influencers, people who got a following of more than 1,000, etc. Brands are finding it really relevant because they got a great loyal base and it helps in getting sales done. So they focus, while we can't say we strike off celebrity influencers, but micro influencers are the way to go. With the new guidelines, somebody who's talking about a new car may not be actually able to afford it, right? Because he or she is a micro influencer, stuff like that. So there are some tricks, some tricky spots around that. That's the fourth. And the fifth thing, because we are talking of the advent of digital, sabke haath mein phone hai, 8 GB data hai, be it a farmer, be it urban, I think there's a great leveler that's there. At one point in time, advertising and data-driven marketing or direct marketing was different. Today, it's all fused. Everything is put into one compartment. Similarly, this lines are blurred. The ATL, BTL for digital and physical, the lines are blurring, and therefore it's all becoming phygital. Because the go-to medium, like Venkat just mentioned, is that a lot has been done digitally, including AR, VR, things like that. But just imagine the times that we are headed towards is completely a cookieless future. Apple has taken away the advertising ID markers available for advertisers. Google is working on a new program which is leading towards a cookieless future. You won't be able to identify individual personas, but it's a cohorts. It's a group of people that you will be willing to do. Facebook is up against arms of that, because that's how their business runs, and Facebook has a different perspective to it. So these three giants who controlling virtually the advertising, the communication ecosystem or the advertising ecosystem are in different thought processes. What will evolve? It's too early to predict right now, but marketers will need to recognize that no longer can you work on with the tap on, tap off approach. You can't be bombarding spray and pray. People used to do it on emails earlier, then they started doing it on digitally. So it worked to a time, but there are going to be changes. So these are the 5 regulatory changes that are coming in. I don't have all the, I cannot in this short time give all the hard answers, what's the right way to do it. But at a fundamental level, what we've all been speaking for so many years, if you truly are servicing the needs of your customers without abusing their privacy, not trying to pester them with stuff they don't need, and not taking undue advantage of the information that you know about them. Be honest in your claims and put the customer first. I think most of the things should self-solve themselves.
I think very interesting and enlightening, Vatsal. Thanks for elaborating on these 5 things. And Venkat also talked about, how do we reach? Sandip, on that point, I come to you, and you being the communication expert, and with the change in the scenario, the way the consumer is likely or would be willing to consume the information, and the regulatory framework which is coming around, and it will evolve. So it's going to be a more anxious times around that. My question to you, as a communication expert, how do you see the shift in communication delivery, specifically to now semi-urban and rural? Now, when I'm saying semi-urban and rural, actually, it also, there is actually now the boundaries are so blurry, it's very difficult to explain. But then in this scenario, how do you see the communication delivery going forward, Sandip?
Right. Yeah, when we're looking at rural, one thing need to be kept in mind is that rural is always going to be offline, online, offline. It is not going to be purely online, unlike an urban audience. So all the TRA guidelines or personal information guidelines, if you have an opt-in, that can be managed. So the opportunity, for instance, even if you look at a CSC, which is all about digital services, but are being offered through a physical center. Or if you look at Colgate, which launched Pocket Dentist as a oral care thing. So it was a digital service, but offered offline to people, to enroll people, whether it was a number to dial in or whatever. Or even if you look at Amazon and Flipkart, they are wanting to offer online sales, but through an offline shop, small shops in small cities, enabling that you go pay and buy online and come back. So rural is always going to remain like that. And that is going to give us, or a marketeer, an opportunity to get an opt-in. And once you have an opt-in, Vatsal is absolutely right. How responsibly you handle the data. No marketeer would want to flout any regulatory norms. But that gives us an opportunity to really get an opt-in and really devise campaigns which enrich the life of a consumer, and in the process build that relationship with them. So that is going to be happening, and gradually over a period of time, like an urban consumer, like our parents or grandparents kind of adopted to technology to a certain extent, rural is going through that now, and the way we adapted it, rural is going through that now. Every person in the village, whether the family member or the younger family member or the friend or the government regulatories, are going to push them through digital means. So that's going to ease the things and open up a lot of opportunities for consumer. Also need to look at it, digital is not just about serving ads or reaching out, but it also helps us to segment the market, identify the consumer even without going there physically, and you rightly said, cohort in that to identify and then serve them the communication on that. So today, without going into a village, sitting here in Bombay or in Delhi or wherever, you can identify which are the farmers visiting and how much of volume have they transacted in a particular season at a mandi. And that's also another way of looking at technology in the entire space. So that is also digital to that extent. Physical, in any case, there's no challenge because you go there and you talk to them and you can manage it. And then in terms of advertising, how do we position our brand? What are our claims? I'm sure marketeers will be well equipped to manage that within their own frameworks. It does make life a little bit tougher for an advertiser to manage those regulatory and yet build their differentiation. But I think that's going to be taken care of. As we go along, I think new opportunities will emerge to address that so it no longer should be a challenge.
So staying on that point, and I'm taking a leaf from the previous session which Raj had conducted on 3Vs. How do you see the video and vernacular? I mean, these two things for rural space are extremely important. Do you think and also superlay the information which Vatsal shared about the micro influencers? Yeah. Micro influencers was always there in the rural space earlier. I mean,
absolutely.
So how do you see that balance of rather the importance of micro influencer being more important into the rural space, and therefore the video and vernacular layers around that? What's your take? What would be your take on that?
A country, a diverse environment like rural will always have to be, and it's going to be a time before anybody picks up the literally skills of English, but then voice is going to remain, and vernacular, because we are so diverse. So vernacular will play a huge role. If I really need to connect with the consumer, I need to speak that language. I have to understand the local dialect and local nuances, and that is what is best delivered in a local language. Video does add a huge amount of value to it. So 3Vs, of course, will play a huge role in that: voice, video, and vernacular. And one need to continue experiment and figure out what is the right way to reach out to a consumer within that. One cannot let it slip away. Just because one experiment did not work, and I don't experiment and I say that this does not work, but that is the way to go. We need to really figure out how to mix and match and then deliver on my communication objective.
Absolutely. Venkat, on this point, I come to you. Now, we had talked about the delivery of communication. But in the rural space, the physical delivery or the distribution is, another very tricky thing. And at times, if it is not handled properly, the costs of distribution can go, haywire. But again, here it comes to your personal experience, and I'd like to elaborate on that. You had done some work, especially in another interesting area of sampling, which is considered to be very cliched physical activity. But in your experiments, you had been able to bring in the digital or the Phygital element to the sampling part of the whole process. We would love to hear, Venkat, your experiences and experiment and learnings and insights from that.
Yeah, so Puneet, I think sampling was one of the age-old tools in the agri-input industry: seeds, crop protection, every other category. Now, it was all being delivered physically, the records were being managed physically, and to an extent, while it was also a huge investment which the companies were making, tracking them and then, getting the outcomes as desired was always a challenge, because, you maintain records in physical forms here and there in Excel sheets or probably notebooks. So what we tried to do, and I think some of the other companies are also in our sector trying to do it. So when we distribute a sample, that is basically through a physical route, because you have to hand over a sample to a farmer. But when we are doing that, once the sample is handed over, we are actually now putting that in a database. We have developed an in-house application which is called Shuffle 2.0, which was also presented in some of the other startup one. We partnered with one of the startups in developing this. So then, you log the lat long of that place. So you know where your sample has gone, to which farmer it has gone. And so what does it give to both the farmer as well as the company? So now that sample can be tracked throughout the crop cycle of that particular 120 days or 150 days. So you can give advisory to the farmer as and when required, because you are also monitoring the sample and now the crop will be at this stage and all. You will help him grow the sample better so that he can get the best output out of it. And more importantly, you are now building a huge database of the farmers, and then possibly can go and check with them whether they are happy, whether they are going to probably multiply their products and all. So most of this, which was actually done in a physical form, now got a blend of physical plus digital, and multiple things can be done once you distribute the sample, from an advisory to an harvest day to probably tracking the farmer back for his purchase intention and all. So I think this experiment of it, I would say probably compared to the earlier one, this has been a much bigger success, and both internal stakeholders, most of them are actually finding a big use of it. Now, the ultimate goal is actually, will the farmer actually key in the data and give us the report? But that would be an end objective, which will take probably some time, but that would be the final delight. Today, what we do is that if you are a farmer, we are giving you the sample and we are logging in all that. And then probably we are, coming back to you at regular intervals to give you advisory and to help you grow the crop. And these goes into, probably few lakhs across the country in multiple crops and all. So I would say this is a small attempt to actually use a combo of physical plus digital, and we are seeing, some success out of it on this whole sampling process.
That's very interesting, man. Lot of sectors. So I was talking to somebody at a cola company. Sampling for them has been traditionally extremely important. Pharma companies, sampling again has been extremely important tool. So I think Phygital is going to solve probably some of those problems as well. Sandip, I'm coming back to you and moving away slightly from the data and the hard things. I'm coming to the softer part of the whole transaction, which is the consumer. And consumer is a human being, and that human being is going through a very anxious times in today's times. How do you see the shift in communication or the language or the tone or the messaging part likely to happen? And if you can also reflect upon, with respect to different age groups on this shift.
Yeah. I think, one need to kind of try and look at consumer more as a human. You very rightly said, not just from the media standpoint or as consumption standpoint, but and then for any effective plan, there are two things important. One is that what is my measured communication and marketing objective. So I need to keep that in mind to design any communication for that matter. And second is that understand the consumer much beyond demographics. What are his liking, which is incidentally available for an urban market through TGI and many other tools. It is pretty much available, but when you come to rural, it is not available. So that becomes very, very important. Demographics do help us to kind of segment the TG to a certain extent, but communication is something which aggregates the TG for me. So to aggregate that, but we need to really understand them as human beings and really understand their dreams, wants, desires, behaviors, to design a communication which is effective and efficient. I think that is going to be very, very important part of it, without which I may be doing something which is not efficient or not effective, and then it won't be scalable and I won't be able to get my measured results out of it. Secondly, when I'm looking at an older generation, for instance, you spoke about how do we kind of design communication. It is going to continue to remain more about touch and feel. We'll have to, of course, set the context. So traditional ways of reaching out will remain there because that's how they will understand it. But whereas when you look at younger audiences which have got internet in their pocket, who are far more exposed, there I need to have shorter formats of communication. I will need to develop that. But then, yes, that is what is going to be dictating that what media do I pick up to connect with them and how do I deploy, looking at what is my strategy to reach out to them and how do we connect with them. That becomes very, very important in here.
Absolutely great. I mean, that's a great insight. That's a really great insight. And it's going to be very, very interesting and challenging times. And I'm sure to address some of these new challenges and new situations, there will be new solutions also would emerge. Vatsal, on that very interesting point, I come to you. We have seen in the last 1 year, various new business models have emerged. Taking a leap of this COVID situation. Education, we have seen a lot of startups coming in. Banking, we have seen the video KYC and all those stuff. The health sector, a lot of work has happened, which was probably didn't happen over so many years. Vatsal, what do you see? Which all other could be emerging businesses which would be interesting to watch for, both for the marketer point of view and also from the startup entrepreneurs point of view?
Well, the way I look at it is the opportunities that are available now have just exploded. There has to be willingness to be able to undertake and solve a problem for the customer. The means and tools for fulfillment are far greater than we could have ever imagined before. So I would say that within the startup ecosystem, uh, there are so many newer services that people have started. It could be home kitchens. It could be giving opportunities for services to the aged, things like that. Uh, I think interestingly, these opportunities would come and go. The newer business models, as there is greater uh, acceptance or embracing of the digital and physical world that is there. So there are third-party aggregators that would come into play. People who are solving problems in the value chain that's there. But what is most interesting from a larger organization or a larger brand perspective that is there is again coming back to that fundament is agility. How quickly and rapidly are you able to, because the business models have changed. They change rapidly and they are changing very fast. Look at brands during the pandemic when there was lockdown, factories were shut down. Brands that needed regulatory approvals to get products out, how they have been able to conceive a product development cycle, shift the category using existing infrastructure, and be able to turn around products that have demand. To put things into context, uh, we know of a variety of FMCG brands, be it ITC, be it Marico, be it somebody else. They all jumped onto the bandwagon of the stuff like hand wash, vegetable wash, things like that. Those were completely new categories that were made available. And as I was speaking to Pankaj from Reckitt, he was saying pandemics are great opportunities to get into newer categories that are there. Who could have imagined a brand like Nerolac could get into something that's making it virus free? See, the way consumers would perceive what we call it as the fab for a product, the features, advantages, and benefits for a product or a product category has altered so significantly. At one point in time, before I would buy a aircon, I would say, "Bijli ka bill kitna aega?" But my motivation now is this AC going to protect me from virus? Is this AC going to be better for me health? And so that was a contextual shift that was there. That I was talking about learned behavior. We as consumers have learned behavior. Some brands did it tastefully and wisely. A lot of others went on to doing haldi wala bread, immunity bread. But वो भी बिकता है. So there is if you have a product, there are takers. We are such a large country. We are blessed to be 130 crores, and only if that entire energy of our country is harnessed in the right way, I think there is a lot of opportunity if every village, town is enabled with those products and services that are there. I think our GDP can grow manyfold, and at the rate at which it's now getting forecasted, it does not look to be a too distant dream. So on that point, and there is a another interesting part that is there. You don't necessarily need to invent new categories, but you need to be inventive in your ways to be able to sell products. And we are talking of AR, VR. Who could have imagined a game like Fortnite would be having 25% of their sales of $2.14 billion coming from just one product? And any guesses what that product is? It's the Nike Air Jordan skins. So people are buying Nike Air Jordan skins in the game. Now it's an example of a physical product truly taken digitally. Who could have imagined I could take a skin of a shoe into a game and do quarter of 2.14 billion of sales, right? So AR, VR, how I would look after this makeup or how I would look after this dress, that's all very old. There are completely new models, and the big opportunities. I cannot pinpoint the segments today that are there, but the big opportunity is people who are going to be able to truly fuse the physical and the digital space. The you can overlay a lot of things on your phone and be able to champion customers. The geofencing stuff that's available on Google. So it's not just what is physical. You take it digitally in terms of communication or as a way of means. You could make your products. There is proof. You can make your products digital. And there needs to be a way to do it. Of course, it was easier for Nike to do it given the brand pull that's there. So yeah, those are the kind of opportunities that are there.
Perfect. Great, Vatsal, great insight on that. We have got 2-3 minutes. So there were some questions which people have actually posted while registering. I'll just pick up one or two because most of the questions are answered during the talk, I'm sure. But there is one very interesting one which is by Dr. Balaji of Chetna RK Institute of Management and Research. And he's talking about the bandwidth of internet in rural parts is very low. In such a scenario, how do you overcome the challenge? Sandip, I think this will come to you as a communication guy.
Sorry, I was on mute. It's a matter of infrastructure. I think with whether it is a road connectivity or internet connectivity, I don't think that's going to be a challenge for a very long time. Even now, I would assume that even if we travel or whenever we traveled last year, we did not find internet to be such a big issue. But then there are voice platforms which don't need internet. There are students which are going to colleges, so internet connectivity is good there. I really don't see infrastructure being a challenge. With the geo coming in, I think a lot of those challenges have been taken care of. So I really don't see that as a challenge, and that has opened up a lot of opportunity with the geo's entry into the market. It's just a very temporary phenomenon. I don't think there's going to be a very
not going to be a roadblock. Venkat, a quick one probably for you. This is from Arup Paul, Micro Private, and he's saying and you have actually partially answered this question earlier, but he's saying that, what's the trend of farmers' belief system moving from offline marketing tools to online marketing tools? And how does the digital media play a key role in demand generation activity? So you answered it partially, but if you can just, he's talking about the belief system shift.
I fully agree with what Arun is saying because this is a very strong belief system. But more than the farmers, I think as rural marketeers or people working in the agri-input space, we should start believing it. The same farmer has got no problem buying it from Amazon on an online platform. Why can't he, do some of those things to an online? So I think the belief system is largely both with the farmers as well as with the stakeholders who are the other people, companies like us. Having said that, yes, there are challenges because the farmer would always like to see the product, physically touch it, meet the, the sales representative or the agronomist and all. Well, those are the challenges. Farmers also very well understand today that given some of those changes which are happening, they also have to adapt. They have adapted to many new technologies, which even in agriculture space, non-agriculture space. So this is a journey, Puneet, if you ask me. And then I think we have to stay convinced and we have to walk this path. And then there is always this blend of physical plus digital, which is going to be, and we have to keep reinforcing and demonstrating it to the farmer. That is the only way. Yes, today, obviously, there are, some thoughts which are going in mind where he is also slightly kind of confused.
Sure. So there are two questions. One is from Hussain Nadiadwala of Godrej and Boys and also Sonal Chaudhary from Synergy. Both these questions are around the cost of BTL activation versus ATL activations and ROI and budgeting. I think during the conversation, these questions were answered, but largely combination of digital and phygital will only bring the costs of operation down. And we have seen the two examples which Venkat had shared and a lot of insights which Sandip had shared about the communication and overlaid by Vatsal, the experiences from the consumer retail side of business. I think this is the way probably to go, and that is the only way to I guess keep the ROIs. And as we said, the friendship of CMO and CFO is extremely important. Vatsal, a quick one from you for you also is there, which is. He is talking. Sonali from TVS is asking about the how do we get a deeper understanding of rural market behavior in terms of brand affinity and content consumption, value system? It's a large question, but if you would like to just take it for a minute or so.
There is she's walked the first part in terms of there needs to be an intent. Sankalp hona chahiye koi bhi kaam mein. So at least asking that question is telling that she's genuinely in need of that. Nothing great was ever achieved easy, but to get a deeper understanding, because our country is so wide, culture changes every 50 kilometers. So it's like a very big statement. But perhaps pockets in which there is interest to know about, you said customer behavior and content consumption habits that are there. Then there is a lot of data that's out there in terms of reports, stuff like that. And I'm sure friends at GroupM or the likes might be able to write your marketing playbooks for you in terms of they've got a gold mine of data, having worked with so many brands that are there. We at DMA have a couple of reports. If that is of any help, I'll make it available to RMAI in terms of distributing it to a wider audience. What are the key behavioral changes that are there. A very interesting survey that we had done recently with about 200 plus CMOs just around 100 days post the first lockdown that had happened, in terms of what is the kind of recovery that they are expecting. Is it L-shaped, K-shaped? Where have they spent their marketing budgets? What's worked for them? What's not worked for them? And what were the channels they used? So perhaps there might be some answers to that. But I think Sandip might be more suited to answer this question.
I would like to kind of add is that in the fast changing world, I think we need to have our ears to the ground. The behaviors are changing very, very fast. So we need to be able to not just look at the insight, but also the foresight of the trends. And I think that is will give me an opportunity. So don't look at that this is what is a casted in stone and we can't do something like that. But then if you are listening and if you are keeping a check on the trend, I think a lot of opportunities will exist.
And to add on to that, what you said, there was this topic of the 2 V's or 3 V's, voice, video, vernacular. If you have to go to hinterland, these 3 things will at least sail you from here to there. They may not be the best arrows in your quiver, but definitely they are a must-have. If this is included in your, if this is holistically included in your marketing plan, then you are at least set for survival.
Absolutely. There were 2 more questions from Prakash Tripathi of APPL and Abhinav. They want to learn more about rural. So both of you are most welcome. Connect with us at RMAI. We have loads of information, and Vatsal has just now offered a lot of more information to RMAI as well. That will be a great thing to do. Feel free to connect with us. We have a lot of information on these sites available. We'll be happy to take that engagement forward. Since the time is now overshooting, so I'll have to probably wrap up before Aadhar gives me a signal to do that. So I'll do it myself voluntarily. So I'll just wrap up, gentlemen. Thanks very much for the time and the elaborate sharing of ideas which you have done. What I summarize the discussions or the insights what you have given, is that for Phygital, what it means basically is to make the customer feel more connected, so that the 3 things are generated which are essential, which is trust, empathy, and the user experience. And the user experience or the customer experience ultimately becoming the most important thing to take the Phygital going forward, which appears to be the right thing to do at this point of time. So gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, all the audience speakers, thank you very much for your time. And we hope that in the last 1 hour, we had been able to cover the relevant topics. We'll be happy to answer any further questions or comments should you have. If there are any questions in the chat box which are unanswered, we'll make sure that those are answered adequately to these respondents. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a safe day. Sorry.
Puneet, I just want to make this very specific mention that over the last few weeks during the pandemic, there have been many webinars that have been happening. I want to acknowledge all the efforts that RMAI has done in terms of being organized to send out panelist notes to get us prepared to come for the panel and be relevant, because most of the webinars that you see nowadays are just people getting on the camera and trying to ramble something. So I appreciate the professionalism with which RMAI has conducted this whole thing, the marketing that's gone behind it. It's absolutely fantastic. And thanks, Puneet, for being such a great moderator. And I got to learn a lot from you, Venkat, and Sandip today as well. Appreciate this whole effort.
Thank you very much, Sandip.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Puneet.
Thank you, Venkat. Thank you, Vatsal, for your kind words. Stay healthy, Vatsal.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Namaskar.
Bye.